Welcome back to another episode of the Two Guys, 4 Cents podcast, where we try our best to normalize conversation. Eric.
Steven.
How are you doing?
I'm doing mighty fine. For personal reasons, I feel like I'm back on track.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, so it always feels good when you
it does.
When you figure certain things out. Not everything, but certain things, right?
Can't figure everything out because then you won't be human.
Right.
That's deep. That shit is deep.
This week, what? If Cyberpunk taught me one thing is... Okay, first of all, answer this question. If you could choose one body part to turn into chrome, what would you choose?
I would say my arms.
Yeah. 100% me too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd have 2 robot arms.
2.
Yeah.
Huge.
Just yeah. You know why? Because frisbee golf, I wouldn't throw out my shoulder anymore. Because every time I throw a frisbee, it just dislocates my shoulder. But
if you get your arms chrome, does that include your shoulder?
I would include it.
So that's not one body part though.
I don't know.
You guys, I'm thinking to do. If you ever want chrome body parts, you got to think about it.
It's important. It's permanent.
Great segue into this episode,
which we'll talk about, in a way, out of control capitalism, and most importantly,
you
don't know what I mean by that?
No.
We're gonna explore why, and I'm gonna tell Steven why. We're gonna talk about the prison system, specifically in the United States and the Scandinavian countries.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to make a comparison out of them. And I'll explain to Steven and the audience at home, I love you guys, why I think it's considered out of control capitalism.
No, I do. I was just trying to see the segue you were trying to. I think
that is the segue.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Here's our 2 cents. Okay, so to explain a little bit of why I said out of control capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So the reason I say that is because the prison system in America, in the United States, is not exclusive to the government. So, for example, in Canada, it's exclusive to the government that take charge of the prisons.
Yeah, it's completely public.
Right.
Yeah.
However, in the United States, because, and I think a lot of it was the war on drugs in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Prisons.
Yeah, so that's
overwhelmed, right?
A whole part to explore, I think. Sort of starting off with this topic and conversation, the war on drugs, and I believe it was Richard Nixon. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's Richard Nixon that initiated that. They started to incarcerate.
Check?
What's that?
You want me to check?
Yeah, you can check while I'm talking.
Keep talking.
They started to incarcerate many people based on non-lethal and drug charges that there's a whole other topic. I mean, just non-lethal and passive charges on drugs. And so what that did is it obviously made the crime rate skyrocket because they changed the definition of what crime is.
Right.
But it also brought the incarceration rate up. Obviously, that goes hand in hand, right?
Surely.
No matter what kind of prison system you have, if your crime rate goes up, incarceration rate should go up too.
Yeah, they're in correlation for sure.
But the important one thing that I highlighted there is that if crime rate goes up, yeah, they're in correlation. That's important. Mm-hmm. That's the important part. We'll touch back on that in a little bit. So what happened was they oversaturated the amount of prisons they had, right? So they only had a certain amount of prisons, and with
Right.
the crime rate skyrocketing, it just made it so that they were filling them way too quickly, and they ran out of room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that in and of itself, I think they should have took a step back and be like, why are there so many people in prison right now? But no, I mean, what any logical person would do is they just hired private contractors to build prisons and paid them.
Right. And
That was sarcasm, by the way.
right. Was it? No, for sure. And like you said, and by the way, yes, it was
Richard Nixon. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So spot on.
Damn right.
Spot on, baby.
I know my shit, dude.
I'd say. Or Google does.
Yeah, Google
Both
knows
of
my
us.
shit. Yeah.
Google knows me.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing with that was now with the private sector coming into the prison business, the more prisoners they would incarcerate,
Mm-hmm.
the more money they would get.
Yeah.
So obviously that brings up a pretty obvious problem right off the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
As you might have.
I mean, the thing is, too, like, it's a pretty blatant problem. I'm sure any sane person would realize where the problem is there.
That's the scary part, because when we watched that video,
Yeah.
which we should probably reference somewhere, like just for educational purposes,
I'll pull it up.
we should advise the audience.
Of what
It's a
the
great
video
listen.
is.
It's a great listen. It opened my eyes
Yeah.
a lot, and it's happening right in front of us, and it's quite scary,
Mm-hmm.
to be quite honest.
It's why the U.S. prison system is the worst in the developed world by second thought on YouTube.
Right. And basically he explains that, well, everything, first of all, but especially the private sectors and how crooked they are.
Yeah.
And then, listen, in America, you know how they were saying, like, defund the police and things like that?
Yeah.
For me, personally, I don't think you should defund the police. I think we should fund them more,
Mm-hmm.
but for educational purposes.
To
So, for
educate
example,
them, yeah.
I think as a police officer, it should be a requisite that you're taking crisis management courses, perhaps some counseling therapy classes as
Mhm.
well, so that you're able to maneuver very difficult
Yeah.
situations, and you're able to de-escalate situations
And understand people.
with empathy, right?
Yeah.
And not tyranny,
That's true. Yeah.
right? Like, it's not, my knee and your neck, and you're gonna do what I
Because
say.
that's, I mean, it's
Which,
also,
listen, there's a place for physical intervention.
Yeah, there needs to be.
Right? I'm not going to say there's no place for physical
Mhm.
intervention. However, there's definitely a much bigger place for empathy
Yes.
and a different approach than to a physical intervention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, and a lot of them, I think, should take similar courses to a social worker would. I'm not saying take the whole damn program.
No.
But there should be classes
They
integrated.
should be
with that.
educated and understand both sides of it, and
You know,
not just the one
yeah.
side.
It's not, you got grade 12 English? Gonna be a
That's
cop,
what I was
baby.
gonna say too. Come on down. That's what I was gonna say too. Is it? Do we know if it's more? I feel like it is more difficult in Canada to become a cop than in the States.
I'm not entirely sure.
I know the process in Canada is quite complicated. There's
Yes
a lot
and no.
to it.
Yes and no, because I know our local police, sometimes there's times where they hire police officers with no
Really?
background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or with no education, things like that.
Okay.
But
So
I know with, for example, like OPP
Mm-hmm.
or RCMP, now that is
In
a
which
long
OPP
process.
2,
That's a long process.
it is. OPP 2 is OPP also is not the second OPP. You know.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm saying. Is some in most places other than where we are is the regional police
Right.
of those areas.
Yeah, totally.
Pretty
true.
much all of Canada.
Like, for
except
example, like
for-
a lot of up north,
Yeah.
their regional police is the OPP.
But even,
Absolutely.
I mean, even not so, like up north when you say that, yeah, because I guess everywhere is north of where the south of Ontario.
Oh yeah, I guess I should specify. Yeah.
But it's like even out west too, like Manitoba, Alberta,
Right.
they don't have local police. It's
Okay.
all OPP.
Cool, I didn't know that.
Or actually not. It's not OPP. That's wrong.
But is
Because
their
OPP is
version,
Ontario Provincial
right.
Police.
But is their
It's the
region's
RCMP
version, is
or
their
their
province's
region version. Yeah.
right? Is their province's version of the OPP?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Because the RCMP, I mean, there's another thing with the OPP where it's way more difficult. It's really stringent to getting into the RCMP.
Which I feel like it should be.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't think it should be one of those career paths where it's like, come on in, we'll take anyone.
No.
It's a very demanding job.
Oh, yeah.
Mentally,
physically.
emotionally, mentally, physically. Not everyone
Verbally.
can handle that. Verbally, everything.
Yeah.
Not everyone is fit for that.
No.
I wouldn't stand a chance in hell being a cop.
No.
However, with that being said, I mean, listen, there's a lot of crooked cops in America.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got a private sector of prisons that depend on having as much prisoners as possible to make money,
Mm-hmm.
then you've got all these tyrannical cops running around. It's a big problem.
Some police officers have a quota. This is getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but they have a quota that they need to fill for every time that they're on patrol.
Right.
They need to give out a certain amount of tickets or arrest a certain amount of people.
Which that's just like
That
insane
doesn't
to
make
me.
any sense.
Because it's like every day's different.
How can you base the amount of work somebody's doing on that? Like that's like
Right.
if being in, I'm trying to find a real world example on my side. That's like, yeah, so doing work in computers and computer programming,
Mm-hmm.
that's like going to work and they pay you based on how many problems you solve.
Right. Which would just be ridiculous.
Because a lot of days it's just one problem that I'm trying to solve.
Right.
And it's a really big problem and it's the same, it's way more difficult than 10 little ones.
So to me, it seems like we got away from cops keeping community safe. And now it's more, not that they're not keeping the community safe, but I think that should be the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
But now in America anyways, they're heading towards meeting quotas, which just doesn't make sense.
No.
I mean, you should encourage, I don't know, it's just a mixed message, you know? You want to encourage people to do the better choice.
Yeah, and you want to encourage safety and safer
Right.
communities.
But then you get an integration of quotas as a cop. So it's like, you know, now you've got a guy, you know, let's say going, I don't know, a little bit over the speed limit. He gets pulled over just because he needs to meet a quota.
Yeah.
He wasn't really, you know,
yeah,
it just gets tricky, I find.
It does.
Not that I'm making any great examples here.
No, I know what you mean.
I
know what you mean.
It's hard
Something
to explain,
that,
but it's just,
it makes things not the same. I can't think of the proper word for that, but it makes things not very even, level for everyone. So let's say like you're driving down the same road one time, and I mean there's a point in giving the police a certain judgment that they can make, like a law that they should roughly be following. There's a point there,
right?
But there's also a point that of being strict with it and saying, okay, this is the speed limit, like internally. I'm not saying publicly,
Right.
but internally they say, okay, the speed limit here is 80 kilometers an hour. We allow up to 85. Anything above 85 will always get a ticket.
Right.
But that's not always the case. Like some cops are more lenient on some things, right?
Sure.
And so there's,
Absolutely.
and that doesn't just, I'm not just talking about like the speed limit. It translates to a bunch of things.
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
There's a lot of,
I would say every law, right?
it's with anything, especially when you give somebody that much power. And unfortunately some people have the power, what's the word? Like a power trip.
Yeah. And listen, I feel like when all of a sudden you have all this power in your hands, I feel like you should be a very level-headed person.
Yeah.
I feel like you should be very educated.
Yeah.
Very informed.
Yeah.
Because that's not a decision to be taken lightly at all. People's lives are on the line, including their own.
Including their own. Absolutely.
So it's like there's no place whatsoever to fuck around,
No.
in my opinion.
No.
So I get that you can train someone to be a cop,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes a hell of a lot more than that, I would say,
Yeah.
than
It
to
does.
just train someone to
Because
be a
it's
cop.
not like it's like training someone to do line work. It's not
Right.
It's not always the same thing every single day.
No, exactly.
It's always completely different. So
It's going to be different each and every single day.
So hitting the quotas, going back to the prison system, hitting the quotas obviously is not something that will make the society better as a whole. A main thing that focuses on is padding the rich's pockets,
Right.
which is another thing, making them private. So they get paid, and they have to. They are mandated to keep a certain amount of people in the prisons at any given time.
Right.
Which is one thing in itself. Like that's just, yeah,
mind blown.
and it's just giving them letting them come up with reasons as to why they're keeping them in there, which doesn't make any sense. But it's also the way that. Just the way that it's working, I'm trying to figure out how to tie this in. But when I'm talking about the prison system and how the lower lines of poverty, like it's really bad in there. But the worst part is, I can't figure out how to tie it. I'm trying to tie in the poverty and the homeless people committing crimes to get into jail, but I can't figure out how to tie it in. It doesn't really matter. But
well, I think we'll be able to touch on that a little later.
Okay.
Like when for example, like when people get out of jail, they're so unsocialized, they have no idea where to start.
That's it. Yeah.
Overwhelmed completely.
So
They're not accepted by society.
That's in the way
they
that
can't
the
get a
system,
job at all.
No, they can't.
So then they're forced back to go into relapse to wherever their previous lifestyle was. Whether it was alcoholic, drug addict, or just being homeless and being sober, whatever it is. You're not going to fit in. Your mental health's going to go gonzos. And a lot of we read, I think it was over 60% get
reintroduced into the system afterwards.
into jail, right?
Reincarcerated.
And a lot of them do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
oh, absolutely.
got nowhere to go.
No, exactly.
So,
but it's also, so the way the prison system works fundamentally in the United States is that it makes it so bad. And I think Canada's partial to some of this too. And then we'll get to the Scandinavian and some of the European countries later. But the way that it works in North America, I would say mostly, is that they try to make prison as bad as it can be so somebody doesn't want to return.
right. They use fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To scare them into not wanting, like beyond scared straight, like the show.
Right. Yeah.
Trying to straighten them out and to make them change their minds on how they want to live their life by scaring them. Which, if there's somebody that's really bad, how will that work?
It's not going to.
No.
Because they're not scared.
Exactly.
I would say, first of all, they're not scared.
No.
I'd say, listen, I mean, like you said, we're going to touch on the Scandinavian countries, so I'll brush on that later, what I was about to say. But the United States has some of the worst. Are you finding a good,
Yeah, I'm good.
comfortable spot? You're good? You're settled?
I'm good.
All right. The rates
Yeah.
of incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, first of all, because
So yeah, I'll just preface what you're saying. So on a fundamental level, the crime rates in the states are going down significantly. Are down
right
at an all-time low.
but the incarceration rates are
Are at the highest they've ever
at
been.
an all-time high, and we were
So
talking about
that's what we said earlier.
right earlier. We were talking about the correlation between
Yeah.
the two.
So
And now they're going opposite ways.
when crime rate goes up,
So what the hell's
incarceration rate
going
should
on
go
there?
up. When crime rate goes down, incarceration rate should go down.
You would think.
Crime rates go down. There's less crime.
And
Nope.
in the United States, that is not a reality.
No.
Simply put, there's around, I think, 2.2 million citizens in the prison system right now, and there's about 10 million plus waiting, whether it's they're on trial, whether they're awaiting sentence, whatever it is. But there's 10 million plus
that are starting the process or
Right.
ending the process on either
Right.
side,
which is insane.
or on parole. because
Or
they're
on
not
parole.
actually in the prisons.
Right. And I think in
which
the
is,
video,
so 10%. That's a
yeah,
hell of a lot of people. I mean, no, 10 million. Keep going.
yeah. So another thing is America's prison population takes up for 22% of the entire world prison population.
Yeah.
Just the United States, 22%
Mm-hmm.
of the entire world prison population.
That's crazy.
And they have the worst
I'm going to Google
incarceration rates out of all the countries. Amen?
Yeah.
Out of China, out of Russia,
Yeah.
out of North Korea,
Out of Russia and USSR.
out of right. USSR, exactly, when
And
Stalin was in power.
So
man.
that's the crazy thing. Like, so it's,
Isn't that mind-blowing?
it's
and
more
eye-opening?
It is. It's more. They're incarcerating more people under the quote unquote freedom, and everybody's free, and there's so many rights for everyone.
Mhm.
Everybody has rights and on everything, right?
Right.
And in countries like China and USSR and communist regimes and dictatorships,
Mm-hmm.
there's less crime, less people incarcerated.
Right.
They don't. The people there don't have the same rights that we do. They can incarcerate someone for whatever the hell they want to.
Right.
And they don't
can
need a
just
reason.
Make up a reason on the spot,
Yeah.
and that's it.
And
You're
there's
gone in
less
jail.
people in jail
Yeah.
per capita.
Right. Like I said yesterday, after talking about this, I won't be surprised if we disappear. So, if we disappear, this is why. No, but it's absolutely eye-opening, and honestly, it was quite shocking when I was making these realizations. And we're not done yet.
I just found it. So, the U.S. Population in 2020 was estimated at 331 million,
Mm-hmm.
which is 4.25% of the total world population,
Mm-hmm.
and they're 20% of the
22. Yeah.
22% of the amount of people that are incarcerated in the world.
Yep.
So they're less than 5% of the world's population, but almost a quarter of the whole world's. That doesn't.
So just let that sink in.
Yeah.
We're gonna give a moment for the folks at home.
Sit
I'm gonna
back.
sit back. I'm gonna stare at the camera. For those of you watching on YouTube, let that sink in.
That's wild.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely
crazy.
insane. Absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm. It is. So, talking about the per capita of incarceration rates, another big problem is, so when you're in prison,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen this because I've traveled in the States a lot. Not really throughout the States, but I mean on the eastern side of the States. And there are, they basically, obviously prisoners, I couldn't think of the name what you call somebody in prison. Obviously prisoners do labor. So a lot of times it's labor that's inside the actual prison itself, right?
Right.
They
Laundry,
clean clothes,
clean
yeah.
janitorial.
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
Yeah.
Another thing that they do, and especially in California, which is one of the most striking things, is that with all of the wildfires that happen out there pretty much
Right.
every year, they basically make them be firefighters.
Yeah, they make them fight the fires.
Yeah.
And put their lives on the line. Now,
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
only fighting fires. I mean, listen, one of the realities is when you fight fires, your life's on the line.
Mhm.
And continue, because I think I know where you're heading.
And yeah, so it's just extremely dangerous to begin with.
Absolutely.
Now, in California, I say luckily, but it's not really luckily, they are paid. Guess how much? $2 a day.
Right.
Or if it's maybe something that's extremely dangerous for them, that really endangers their lives, $2 an hour, which is,
Yeah.
you're making money.
Right. And also, prisoners have a minimum wage that they earn,
Yeah.
12 cents.
Yeah.
And some states aren't even obligated
No.
to pay.
No, to pay that.
So, but 12 cents
So-
an hour. It's like,
So they're forced to work, right? Yeah, they're forced to work. They don't have the option to, like everybody else does in the world. Realistically, people have the option to work.
Mhm.
They're forced to. They're forced to do dangerous jobs that they, when they get out of prison, they're not able to be a firefighter.
No.
Because of the criminal record.
Right.
Anyways.
Damn.
So
way to integrate him back into society, folks.
This is the job.
And then society will be like, oh, serves him well. He's a criminal. He's lazy.
Holy.
Wow. What a way to think.
Wow.
God bless.
Yeah. So they're forced to do that dangerous work, and they're paid next to nothing.
To put their lives on the line.
To put their lives on the line.
And to keep us safe.
That's literally like the definition, especially doing it for free. That's the definition of slavery.
Yeah, modern day slavery. Yep. That's what that video was talking about. And
I don't know. I think
stuff.
It might be because the just the negative light on criminals. Obviously, if they're bad people, there's going to be a negative light on them, right? That's a given, and that's not going to be no matter where you are. I think no matter how the prison system is, there's always going to be that. But it's what was I going to say with that? It's not talked about.
Right.
It's not talked about that they're forced to work in it's slave labor.
Right. And for example, like with all this COVID-19 stuff, they were forced into labor to prepare things, all the sanitization things,
create masks, I'm sure.
Right. So
and companies use them too, right? Like companies use the free labor.
Yeah.
The free labor.
Right.
Like so the big companies, like McDonald's and IBM and stuff like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is, I mean, that in itself just makes me angry because they know what they're doing and it's so cheap. It's just like we both have a problem with producing stuff in China.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's why I was very disappointed when Elon Musk had integrated himself into China.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I know money is money.
Money talks. Money talks over anything else in the world.
That's the thing. And that's what I meant in the introduction is out of control capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to be honest. Like, I enjoy capitalism when it's not out of control.
It is, if it's done perfectly, I think it is one of the best.
Yes. One of the most efficient systems you can have.
Yeah. And obviously it needs to be mixed with other systems. Like there needs to be a sprinkle of socialism. There needs to be sprinkles of other stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, we live in Canada, right? We're a rather socialist country.
Yeah.
But any system in extreme, right?
Again, it's the
is
extremes.
bad.
Yeah.
Right? We've talked about this already. Out of control capitalism is bad. Out of control socialism is bad. Doesn't matter what the system is.
Exactly.
If there's no balance to it, it's over. Chaos ensues. And I mean, I think we're seeing it here. Absolutely. And these companies they're just gonna keep growing.
Yeah.
Off of this whole entire system.
And
that's happening right in front of our bare eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's kind of like a universal truth. It's like everyone's like, yep.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's just
it's
just one of those things.
The way it is.
They're criminals.
Yeah.
And then you hear a lot of the same people being like, oh, Europe is so cool.
And so
so progressive.
That's it. We're not saying
look into Europe.
Like criminals are the bad guys, right? Because they're not. I mean, no, we're not saying the criminals are good guys. We're saying that they're not the best guys.
Sure. and let me get a few things off my chest and out of the way. Premeditated murder. I think you deserve the death sentence.
Which is something that you, when you plan a murder ahead of time,
right,
and commit it.
Premeditated, yeah. Pedophilia. I don't think you should exist.
No.
Like, I think the world is better off without that soul.
I think so too.
Might be a harsh view of mine. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. But again, to me, they don't bring anything to this society. Waste of taxpayers' money. Oh, and that's the thing.
Yeah. So this is the part that I wanted to touch on too.
Right. Well, since we're talking about the prison system, private sectors, public sector, government run, who's all paying for this?
Yeah. Everybody.
Say it, Steven. Take it away.
Everybody that's paying the private companies, not just the companies that the government owns.
Right.
The companies that are privately owned, taxpayers are paying them. They make a ton of money. They make way more money off taxpaying and the deals they have with the governments to keep certain quotas and stuff like that.
Right.
And the extra money they make, they fuel into. This is where we're gonna go missing. They fuel into they fuel into the political system.
Right.
To then donate the money and fund politicians that share their values, which is making more money.
Right. And that's why we see the same pattern, whether it's Democratic or Republican. The prison system has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
They're all crooks, okay? Let's stop pretending one's better than the other. They're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
They just have different temperaments and different.
Too
It's insane to me.
is why is I just thought of this when you were saying that. Why is physical and like that kind of crime? When you think of crime, you think of like a bad, rough guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is white collar crime not viewed the same way? Because it's just as bad.
Because money talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say everything in it is just as bad. It can, but the possibility of it going untouched. Because
Right.
I mean, like if somebody defrauds the government by not paying the tax, it doesn't affect the direct people.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying it's not as bad in that sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. No, for sure.
But if it's something that a group of many people do that are doing tax fraud,
right,
and they crash the economy like happened in 2008.
Oh, that was some hellacious fraud going on.
That's just as bad.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like almost like mass murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's poverty. You're creating poverty. You're creating people that can't.
And especially
afford to
the
eat.
crash or recession in 2008, man.
Mm-hmm.
Insanity
Mhm.
what people went through.
Yeah.
Banks were closing, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Little old banks closing down.
Yeah.
Anyone who was in business with that bank, done.
Out of money.
Dunzos.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Where it's like, for example, I think Canada, you're insured up to $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't matter. You had $1 million in a bank, bye.
Yeah. All done. See ya.
Ciao, amigo. And those guys got 0 time in prison.
Mm-hmm.
0.
Because I'm sure
Money talks.
There was some underground.
For sure. For sure.
Just
And
don't charge me for anything here.
you got it.
I'll give you.
You
a little
understand.
something.
You understand.
You understand, right? Yeah.
I just put money in Steven's pocket,
Yeah.
by the way, for our non-YouTube audience, which
Couple
you should
million.
probably check out our YouTube. 2 guys, 4 cents.
On YouTube.
On YouTube. YouTube. YOUTUBE.com.
That was a good job.
Okay, so what I was going to say is, for example, in poverty, right, there's drug use, right, and drug deals,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not exclusive to poverty, but you'll see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And then, that's a crime. They get thrown in jail, drug dealing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then and it's already proven that privileged folks and people with a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
are just as likely, if not more, to do the same behaviors, to do drugs, to
Mhm.
drug deal. But they don't get incarcerated
That's the
because
thing.
their dad or their mother, because we don't discriminate here at 2 guys, 4 cents.
No.
They make a lot of money,
Mhm.
and they can pay off whoever the hell they want,
That
including
yeah.
the judge, including the lawyers. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It gets it done, and then they never get in trouble. So
No.
it's like,
And they never learn the lesson.
No.
They'll always be like that.
right.
And it's not so much that they will learn the lesson in prison. They'll learn more of a lesson than a slap on the wrist and say, "Don't do that again."
It's not even a slap on the wrist. It's like just a free get out of jail free card.
I mean, I would hope at least the parents that are paying for it are saying, "Don't do that again." But I'm sure
Perhaps.
that's not always the case.
Right.
I don't even want to think of that. But,
Yeah. Let's not think about it too much.
And so the other
Then I'll
thing
get big
too,
depressed.
when you were talking about doesn't matter who you are. So 2 people, one unfortunately they're 2 different races. Unfortunately, one is white, one is black.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the same thing. They have the same background, did the same crime. The African American is going into prison for significantly longer than the Caucasian.
Yes. Right.
Which, I mean, that's the systemic racism that everybody's talking about. That's it right there. Like,
That's it.
it doesn't get much more blatant than that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because of money, because of the corrupt people are inherently racist. There could be something there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this could be a separate. Well, I think it should be a separate
Mhm.
episode of itself. But
We'll need a lot of research to be able to.
Right.
talk about
I
that.
definitely want to speak very precisely
Mhm.
about an issue such as that.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, like you said,
But still, I
it's
mean,
one of the biggest issues. Like you said, the systemic racism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Like I'll have to do some reading.
Mm-hmm.
But I know from what you just said that they get charged harsher sentences than their
Caucasian counterparts.
Caucasian partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So enough talking about the negative side of everything. The negative, this is horrible, this is bad. Let's give some solutions.
Which it is.
It is bad, but let's give some solutions, right? Like, you can't say something's bad and just end the podcast. Okay,
All
this
right,
is where
guys,
we're ending
thank you
it.
so much.
It's just bad. The end. No solutions.
Don't
no
go to
change.
jail, especially not in America. Incarceration rates are 635 people per 100,000. And to put things in perspective, Canada is 105 and Norway is 70, I think. So let's talk about the Scandinavian
Let's get
countries,
there.
baby. Let's talk about the Vikings.
Countries, specifically Norway and Finland, which is what we did most of our research on, because there's a lot there that just makes sense.
There
and
is.
Isn't it nice when it just makes sense?
I love when things make sense. And you know what? In the 90s, Norway decided to take a calculated decision, because they like to fix problems in Norway. When they see a problem, they try to find a solution, right?
Yeah.
Unlike the United States of America, the powerhouse of the world. So they're in Norway in the 90s. They were like, you know what? We think we can revamp our prison system because
the rates of reincarceration were rising
extremely high,
significantly.
like 60 to 70%.
Yeah.
And so, that was screaming to take a different approach.
Yeah, there's something wrong here.
So they did take a different approach. Hallelujah.
And it was the people.
Wow.
I mean, it's important to say that it was the people of the country.
The people
that fought for it.
That stood up against it, and that made a change. So, listen, if you want change, that's how you do it, right? And I mean, we've been seeing it with the protests, right? With, for example, the Black Lives Matter.
It doesn't need to be violent.
Doesn't need to be violent, right?
And I'm sure a lot of people that were there, the people, from what I gathered, the people that were being violent weren't there for the same reason as the people that truly cared about it.
Right.
Were there to peacefully protest.
Right. And we talked about the difference. I think we talked about the difference between rioting and protesting, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, very important thing to distinguish. But the Norway's approach is they looked at jail to be more as of rehabilitation, learning, being trained in trades,
really getting value out of it, like changing
and really investing in them as a person.
And that's it.
You've got to look at the person as a whole, because not all criminals are the same. And obviously, it's much more than just. It's much more than just labeling. Let's say, like, for example, when I made the difference between, like, let's say premeditated murder. Like, I don't think if we were to have a prison system like Norway here, for example, like premeditated murder, I still think there's no place for you.
No, if you're planning to kill someone, take somebody else's life, and you're okay with it, I feel like personally you should be
right.
They should take your life with the other life.
But let's say like manslaughter, or drug dealing, or crimes like that.
Doing drugs.
Hard drugs.
Being a hard drug addict.
Right.
That's a whole other topic.
Like, I think, yeah, for sure. But I think there should be a less of an approach of fear and torture, right? Because the prison system in America is torture. Just watch that video that we referenced, and you'll understand what we're talking about. But again, it was more about therapy, rehabilitation, and building them up to have them be reintegrated into society in an efficient way, and not just back in a system after 2 years.
To find their values, to find their meaning, right?
For sure, because you got to think, some criminals, the life that they've had, that's all they've known. They were born into that kind of life. They don't know anything else. They don't know how important education is.
No, exactly.
They don't know how important social skills are. They don't know how important it is to regulate your behaviors. Some people are born into chaos, and they don't leave chaos ever. So that is all they know. Let's say, unfortunately it happens, they commit a crime. let's say they get 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
What are you teaching
it was
someone?
Tough. It was tough already before going to prison.
Right. And what are you teaching someone when you just put them behind the slammer
Mm-hmm.
and you just let them rot?
Yeah.
What is that teaching them?
Give them barely nutritious food.
Exactly. You're not teaching them anything. If anything, you're teaching them that
To hate the system.
Really, to hate the system and to be resentful.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that either a few episodes ago about resentment
Mm-hmm.
and how powerful resentment is.
Yeah.
What do you want to do when you resent something? You want to destroy it.
Yeah.
You think he's going to get out of jail and just start being a proper person in a society?
No, yeah.
No.
Not at all.
No. So that's why Norway took a different approach.
And so something to touch on what you said a little bit there, I watched a documentary on Netflix on the Notorious B.I.G.
Mm-hmm.
And his upbringing. And so in the, it was mostly in the 80s and some of the 90s as well. It was, especially growing up in those poorer parts of New York City,
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, so they gave examples of it. They could go to school and do that, or they could just not do that and go on the street and make ridiculous amounts of money selling drugs.
Right.
And so, like, if you're growing up like that and that's all you have around you, you need influence.
Right.
Right? Like, what influence will you get by doing that and then being thrown into prison and belittled for 5 years and then being thrown back out? You'll be like, okay, well, I know this is really easy to do, so I'm going back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just enjoy prison again for 5 years.
Yeah. So they call it restorative justice. That's their focus.
Mm-hmm.
And as mentioned, right, this was revamped in the 90s. And we said the reincarcerated rate,
reincarceration rate.
Yeah, reincarceration rates were at 60 to 70%.
Mm-hmm.
But in recent years, after this big switch, we're talking about 20%.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And my source is borgenproject.org.
Mm-hmm.
BORGEN project.org. And rather than focusing on punishment or mistreatment of its prisoners, again, the primary goal is to have the prisoners as a stable contributor to that community.
Absolutely.
And it's truly like a community.
Yeah.
It's still in an enclosed area.
Yeah.
But, for example, they have their own supermarket they can shop in. They have their own room that they can roam around in.
They get a wage.
They get a wage.
For doing work. They don't just get it for free. Like, they do work, but it's...
They can cook food that they want.
Yeah.
Right? It's all everyday skill that they're practicing.
And another thing, too, is the correctional officers are trained in how to deal with, like, the difficult parts of it, right?
How about this? The correctional officers are trained to almost be counselors.
Yeah.
To have an empathetic approach.
Yeah.
Not compassionate, but empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to talk about the difference between compassion and empathy, but that's for another time.
Okay.
But again, an empathetic approach, an understanding approach, and what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, they're also trained on if something goes wrong, which I'm sure there's stuff that
but
goes
that's
wrong
when
too.
physical intervention is necessary.
Exactly.
Sometimes that's why there is a place for physical intervention, and I'm sure they have nonviolent intervention crisis training.
Oh yeah,
right.
I guarantee.
Which is which anyone who doesn't know, nonviolent crisis intervention is safely removing someone out of danger, whether it's for themselves or for others around you.
Mm-hmm. And that's important.
It's done very safely, and it's done with 2 people minimum. But with an adult, usually it's 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Because I've learned, I deal with that.
Yeah. Well, it's important to save them from themselves too.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. If they're a danger to themselves or the people around them. Exactly. And it also, which since we were talking about capitalism and economy, this prison system also benefits Norway's economy as well. You got to think, like, in these prisons, they have, for example, classes that they can attend. So that's hiring more teachers, right? Stimulates the economy.
Absolutely.
Right? Let's say, I'm sure that there would be, for example, cooking classes. They got to hire a chef, right?
And there's other
so it stimulates the economy.
There's we saw some examples in the video, and I read some too. Like, it's not just trades, stuff like that. If somebody wants to learn really scholarly skills like
physics, everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They can learn that too.
Absolutely.
I know there are some facilities, like some correctional facilities in the United States that do offer classes like that. I just think, well, no, I didn't really look into that as much, but I know that does happen sometimes.
Right.
Which is good. That's
great.
Great.
Yeah. And let me read a quotation here from BorgenProject.org or BorgenProject.org. Okay, so among the prison population that was unemployed prior to being arrested, there was a 34% increase in this group partaking in job training courses and a 40% increase in employment rates. Lastly, Norway prison systems equips its prisoners with education-based knowledge and labor skills that have long-term benefits to its country's economy and also improves their personal lives. So, when you're exposing someone that's broken, I would say criminals are broken people. When you're exposing broken people to what life truly can be, a spark can go off.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone.
No, it won't.
There's still a 20% of people that get
reincarcerated.
Oh, man.
It's a tough word.
No, I get confused between reincarnated and reincarceration.
It is. There's a difference there, but
oh yeah, well, one is something that's good, and the other one's is you're going to jail.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get confused.
Yeah. And it won't work for everyone. But it's also the one thing I wanted to touch on too is
when you expose someone to that, a light's going to go off.
Yeah.
And it's going to make them want to be a productive citizen.
Exactly.
Continue.
Absolutely. One of the other things too, which might be one of the last points that we touch on, is that in the States, the way they get, it's really convoluted the way they get charged, how the length of their sentences. Like some people can get 2 life sentences because a life sentence is only a certain amount of time. Like a life sentence is only 65 years, and if they're really young, they want them in there for exactly that. But they can get 2 life sentences plus 100 years. Yeah. Like stuff like that.
It's like they're not going to be alive for 300 years. Relax.
But there's legal reasons for that.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
It's just really complicated.
Right.
And I'm going to do it injustice if I try to talk about it. The Denmark, I believe it was Denmark, or is it Finland, that was only like maximum of 25 years they get. Do you remember?
Well, I think Norway is 15 max.
So being a max like that. And so we're not saying that somebody that has premeditated murder or a real serious charge should be getting away with that, because they should be, there's other things that can be done in that regard. But somebody that messed up, robbed the place, and really changed. And I think the system is in place a little bit in the States, but it's overcrowded by all the negativity. If somebody does really good, they can be released for parole.
Sure. There is some, listen, it's not all abyssal darkness, but a big, huge part of it is just out of control capitalism, and they're taking too much of an advantage to it, for sure. And
I think the major important thing is, just like being a cop is in black and white, the length of a sentence and how much someone changes after they made that mistake isn't linear. Right. Like there could be one guy that robs a place, and in a year a psychologist can understand that he's truly, like, he knows what happened, and he's sincere,
and he wasn't in a good place, and
he is now.
Right.
But that's why you need people like psychologists or other people that are qualified to be able to make those decisions.
Sure.
And then there's another guy that robs it, and in 5-10 years he gets released and does it again.
Right.
Because he you can't get through.
There's a lot of inconsistency.
So it's not. I mean, we're oversimplifying everything. I don't
Sure.
know if like the law system and the judge system is that. It's way more complicated than we're thinking of it. But I'm just saying, those are some things that I think, and that's our 2 cents on how that should be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so it's
That's
really, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was a really, we learned a whole lot in this doing some research in this podcast. I have done a little more research, before a little while back on the prison system in Norway and in Denmark, and it rang some bells when I just saw it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
forgot
remember
about
I
it.
had consulted it a long time ago, and I was closed off to the idea when I had first seen it. But it was really the eye opening for me was really finding out what's going on in America with the prisons and the private sectors, and it's just insane. And I mean, like, private sectors in itself is just, it's terrible news.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like even in Canada with COVID-19. The retirement homes, right?
Yeah.
So the private sector retirement homes, COVID's been everywhere in them.
Yeah.
But the government funded ones and regulated ones, pretty clean. So it gets you to think again. Gets you to ponder on that.
Exactly.
But for tonight's episode, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
We appreciate it each and every single time. Whenever it is you do watch this podcast, we appreciate it. Whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Apple Music, whether it's on our
Apple
OG
Podcasts.
Anchor. What's that?
Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcasts, not music.
OG Anchor.
I am not making music yet, but I do have a few instruments at home, so who knows?
Stay tuned.
But until then, that was our 2 cents, and ciao ciao.
Talk to you guys later.
Bye now.